Okay, well, listen, thank you very much indeed for so many of you taking time out to come and join us this evening. This is the first of a number of webinars we're going to do. In fact, we're going to be doing 8. My name is Rod Mitchell. I'm the Marketing Director at Motorcycle Law Scotland, and I'm just going to be hosting this evening's session. As I said, we've got 8 webinars every Monday for the next 8 weeks. One member of the Motorcycle Law legal team will take you through various different aspects of civil law and the collisions and the work they do to try and educate a little bit further than we have to date. We're recording all of these webinars as well, so you should be able to view them if you can't actually attend yourself through our website and through our YouTube channel and also on Facebook. So the information will be there for you to use as you need. Okay, without further ado, perhaps I can pull up Brenda's slides and get the ball rolling.
Hello, I hope everybody can hear me. This is a rather disconcerting. I spent about 5 minutes putting my lipstick on, doing up my hair, all for no reason because you can't see me, which might be just as well. I'm so used to talking to people and seeing people, so it's a bit of an unusual environment, but here we go. This evening, we're going to talk about rural motorcycle collision cases and case law. So, a little bit about me. There I am. I've been a keen motorcyclist for many, many years, and probably, well, more recently, about 2 years ago, I joined IAM as an advanced rider. I think for me personally, motorcycling to some people comes very natural. You know, they're at one with their machine. I'm one of these individuals, always seem to have to work hard and things. And I thought, with what I see on a daily basis, I wanted to make sure I had the skill set as best I could to try and avoid what I come across. So, next slide, please. This is a little bit about motorcycle law. I've been a lawyer for 32 years, and about 10 years ago now, well, it's exactly 10 years ago now, I set up motorcycle law because I genuinely believe that you can't possibly represent injured motorcyclists unless you're out there doing what you do. And that to me is very, very important. It enables me to argue cases, to understand motorcycle dynamics and control. There are many law firms that will say, yes, we're specialists in personal injury, and that may well be, but to us at Motorcycle Law, it's more than that. We need to be specialist lawyers, yes, lawyers first and foremost, but we need that background, that motorcycling background. So this evening, I'm going to discuss collisions. In my day, we used to call them accidents. That's no longer PC. So we've got collisions, crashes, incidents, whatever you like, and they tend to be divided into 3. So you've got fault, which means you're entirely the author of your own misfortune. Non-fault, that means somebody else was entirely to blame. And what we're going to talk about this evening as well is perhaps some part fault, because often you can discover that, you know, both parties could and should have done something to prevent the collision. So we always like a wee video and examples. So I'll show you an example of a fault accident. This is Loch Lomond's side. Watch the middle rider. Oops. Where is he now? And there's an inevitable collision. So as you can see, he'd crossed over into the opposing carriageway, and that's what we describe as a fault accident, which means you cannot recover damages in law. On the opposite side, though, this is a chap, Scottish guy, off to Morzine. They've got better weather than we do, lovely roads. Morzine is in France. He's out there with his mate, and he goes around a corner. Everything's hunky-dory. Wallop. That vehicle was on the opposing side. There's absolutely nothing that motorcyclist could have done about it. So as I said, this evening, we're going to have a wee chat about rural roads. Some of you might recognize Glencoe and you'll say it never looks like that. This day I went up there as part of, I think it's a campaign, I keep getting this wrong, I think it's called Live Fast, Die Old. I should never say live fast, die young, which I've got a tendency to do. And off I went with Rod, and it was about 33 degrees, beautiful day. The one thing about Scotland is we do have some absolutely cracking roads, but rural roads come with a massive health warning. When I looked at the IAM web pages, 3/4 of fatal collisions occur on rural roads. And motorcyclists are overrepresented in that. Police Scotland will always say to motorcyclists 2 things on rural roads. 1, do not overestimate your ability, and 2, ride defensively. So talking about rural roads this evening, we're going to have a little chat about some of the challenges we face on rural roads. The first one being agricultural vehicles. So I will move on to a case favoured by the insurance industry. This is a case, Arnott v Sprake, and it was always rolled out by insurers to deny liability. Now, Arnott was a motorcyclist. This is a country road. There was no central line road markings. 60 miles an hour, he goes into a left-hand bend. He reduced his speed to about 45 miles per hour. As he entered that left-hand bend, believe it or not, he was faced with a tractor towing a crop sprayer behind that had pulled out of a junction just by the bend in order to turn right. There was a collision, he was injured. He raised an action against Sprake. At first instance, the judge said, well, actually, I think the crop sprayer driver, tractor driver should have done more. He should have alerted. After all, this was an unusual road. It was narrow, and it was an unusual vehicle given the size of it. Now, Sprake, no doubt with the backing of NFU, thought this is an outrage. We're country folk. We're entitled to drive our crop sprayers. So appealed the decision, and at the appeal, the decision was a farm vehicle is not an unusual vehicle on a country road, nor is the width of the road unusual, and the motorcyclist got nothing, 0 in damages, entirely his own fault. So think about it, into left-hand bend, 45, something's there, wallop, entirely your own fault. And insurers always come out with Arnott v Sprake to deny liability. So this happened through motorcycle law not so very long ago in a similar case. So Adam Russell against NFU. Now, Adam was a young man and riding an R6. Those of you in the audience may put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5. As motorcyclists, you've got to imagine when we're riding our motorcycles, we're faced with all sorts of hazards. So he's making his way from Innerleithen to Peebles. There's lots of things to alert him on the road. First of all, this is the entrance to Glentress Forest, and there's a truck coming down. So momentarily, he will take his eye off the road ahead to look to his right. Now, we reconstructed this accident because what happened is as Adam made his way around this sweeping bend, if you look up in the top foreground there, you will see the nose of a vehicle poking out. And this is exactly what happened to Adam. He came round, he was concerned about that big truck, and that vehicle had been working, the chap who owned it had been working in a field, and he decided to pull out of the field, towing a huge trailer. I think together it was about 33 feet long. Pulled out, Adam could not stop in time, and a collision occurred. Adam was badly injured. We raised an action in court for him. The defence to the case, of course, was not quite Arnott v Sprake. it's entirely your own fault, Mr. Russell. These are country roads, you should expect these things. But we were smart enough to look at other case law, and I have a trade union background, so we said, well, there's case law, Stacey v. Gypsum Mines. This is actually an employer's liability case. And we said, when there's multiple reasons for an incident to occur, you look at the causal factor. Now, the defenders in this case said the causal factor is Adam's speed. There was no evidence that Adam was exceeding the speed limit. He was riding at or about 60 miles per hour. The causal factor was the driver with the trailer pulling out to turn right. Lady Stacey, pin-up girl of motorcyclists in Scotland, said, actually, we agree with you. The driver is 100% to blame because he pulled out onto the main road once Adam had come round the corner and was visible. So on the matter of contributory negligence, then she wasn't persuaded there was any evidence to suggest that. So when insurance companies say Arnott v. Sprake, we will fight them every single time. However, tractors and motorcyclists that are speeding do not go. 2 cases, both English decisions. So Goad was very seriously injured. It was a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. He was riding on a street section of road, and a tractor pulled out from a junction to his left. That tractor cut the corner a bit, thus reducing the tarmac available to Goad. But Goad was riding at 55 and a 40. Judge said, no, not a penny in damages. Lambert, he was more unfortunate because the action was raised by his widow because Lambert did not survive the collision. He came over a blind summit on his motorcycle, beautiful day, but on the opposite side of the road, a tractor was coming uphill to turn right into a field. Lambert came over the blind summit doing 80. There was a collision, no liability. Didn't recover a penny in damages. So tractors, motorcyclists speeding don't go. But there's so many, I would say about 40 to 50% of our cases in the summer do involve tractors to some degree. One of the first cases we had to deal with when we set up motorcycle law was for a chap, this is Drumnadrocket. Now he was riding his motorcycle and he came upon a tractor. What was rather amusing about this client is he made that fatal error. You know, you decide to sell your motorcycle and you think, I'll just go out one last time, make sure it's running tickety-boo. And that's what he was doing, last run on the motorcycle before selling it. In any event, he came upon a slow-moving tractor, made his indication, lifesaver, pulled out, and as he drew level with this tractor, the tractor commenced a turn into an unmarked entrance for a farm. The motorcyclist, knowing there would be a collision, laid the motorcycle down. Collision occurred. We took over the case from previously instructed solicitors and they said 50-50. We said, no, absolutely not. I went up north, saw the reporting police officer who said, well, actually there's 2 versions of events here. The motorcyclist was absolutely convinced the overtake was on, it was a good overtake, laid the bike down. The tractor driver, on the other hand, said that he was driving along, he wanted to turn right, he indicated, then looked in his mirror, think about that, and saw a motorcyclist separated from his bike. Ultimately, we raised the action 50-50, not good enough for us, and we recovered damages for our client at about 80%. Why 80%? Overtaking anything at a junction or otherwise, you've got to be very, very careful. Factors, what do you see? This, thankfully, is a case that does not involve speed. It involves a young motorcyclist at the time, age 17, on a 125. He won't mind me saying that, he was quite a big laddie. I think he weighed about 16, 17 stone, was going uphill. So as I say, speed was not an issue. This was the B road. It was about midnight and it was in Dumfries area. You get lots of coups in Dumfries. You get a lot of things going on with farms collecting milk, all sorts of weird and wonderful hours. And as Adam approached what he thought was a slow-moving vehicle coming towards him, the road undulated. So there are times he dipped down and the lights in that vehicle would disappear and he would pop up again. And as he popped up again, this is what those lights are. Next. It was a milk tanker reversing into a farm at midnight. Tanker driver has about an inch clearance on either side. The farmer used to come out and help him in and, you know, go further down the road to warn, but the farmer had died, I think, 2 weeks before the accident, and the son who took over didn't have the same measures in place. Adam went into this vehicle and unfortunately lost his right leg. He went to a firm of solicitors and the solicitors had the case for about 2.5 years, and they said, look, Adam, NFU will pay you £9,000 for your new bathroom, but beyond that, nothing doing. So with 6 months to go, Adam approached me. I'd set up a business. We were 6 months into business, and I said, oh, I'll take this case on, utterly convinced that more should have been done. So we raised the action. We acted on a speculative basis, which means if we lost the case, we'd have to pay out a huge amount of money. Just started off in business, a risky business. But we believed in Adam, and ultimately we did get a decision. The decision came from Lord Uist, who was convinced that the driver of that milk tanker should have done more. And he awarded Adam damages in law. And if you were so furious about it that they appealed the decision, and on appeal it was flipped, but Adam still recovered his damages that were about £400,000. Compare that to £9,000 for your new bathroom. So it was a success, but we were still disappointed with the decision. Moving on, we're rattling through this. Bends, left-hand bends, one of the most common causes of rural accidents. So here's a set of circumstances. Think about this. This is a case from England. So we have a left-hand bend. The motorcyclist was a novice rider. By that, not very experienced. And he's going into a left-hand bend. There was a lorry approaching from the opposite direction. It was a large vehicle, left-hand drive, I think Polish driver. The lorry and the motorcyclist, therefore, are on approach to one another. They cannot see one another. In evidence, it was established that the lorry wheels were over the centre line road marker. However, the motorcyclist was very near to the centre line. There is a collision between these two, and unfortunately, the rider lost his right leg. So if you think about that, you think, goodness, that rider's well over, he's near to the centre line. This was a decision from the English courts. The motorcyclist, 100% to blame. So there are challenges on rural roads. And what we always say is to expect the unexpected. I'm raising this. Some of you may be familiar with this road. It's one of my favorite, actually, roads. We all love a wee trip to the Green Welly. And this is coming down the A85 towards Callander. There's a sign that says reduce speed now. Female rider, R6. I don't have anything against R6s, please understand that. And she approached this left-hand bend. She reduced her speed from 60 to about 45. And as she came around that bend, she was met by a VW transporter stationary on her lane. Why was he stationary? There's a really lovely viaduct. I think it's called the Glenogle Viaduct. And it's just in there. And this driver thought, oh, I'll nip in there and have a look. Entrance to that viaduct is about kind of less than 90 meters beyond that bend. The rider comes beyond that bend, wallop, stationary vehicle. And she thought, I don't have enough time to stop. Think about that. Highway Code Rule 126. It's not always possible to stop in the distance you can see to be clear. She makes a decision in the agony of the moment. I'll go to the right because I can't go to the left. There's rock formations. As she goes to the right, so does the driver. Bang, there's a collision. She's injured. We recovered damages for her. There was a deduction of about 30% for contributory negligence, but that driver should not have been stationary, turning right just beyond a bend. Highly dangerous maneuver. Other things you find in country roads, roads are quite narrow. I was looking at, I think, the AA website, and it described, you know, country, the experience that you'll get in the country: friendliness, kindness, unselfish behavior, and alarmingly common. Sincerity is widespread. But while country people may be alarmingly straightforward, the same cannot be said of country roads. My worry was twice the reference to alarmingly. So is it the case that on country roads we could be met with friendliness? Think about this. I know it's Bathgate at a stretch, it's rural. This particular motorcyclist, he was going into a right-hand bend. He was met by a vehicle, Clio, a little hot hatch, as we like to call it. And the motorcyclist said, going into that right-hand bend, I was well over to my near side. That's the position I would be in. The Clio was right over onto my side of the road. I had no alternative. I had to ditch the bike and he went into the near side. The Clio driver, however, immediately after the accident, he gets out of the car, our chap's in the ditch, pain, he's in discomfort, and the Clio driver walks up to him and calls him a effing moron. So what happened to our friendliness in the country? That gives you a clue in relation to the type of individual you're dealing with. Now, the insurance company refused. They said, no, our driver says you're on the wrong side of the road. And by the way, you were taking the racing line. So what is the racing line? This is where we asked, and we will often go to expert motorcyclists. We've got Roddy Benzies, who we use quite a lot. It's a fantastic expert witness because he can tell us quite a lot about motorcycle dynamics and control. Racing line, you'll see it there. But our chap had said he was taking the near side right the way through. In truth, when the police went to investigate that, the Clio driver said that our chap was so far over onto his side of the road that he had to take his vehicle off to his near side. There was no evidence of damage to the Clio, disturbance on the verge, nothing. And so we recovered damages in full. So there's always a thing about a bit confusion, criminal v civil law. So there are occasions when a motorcyclist may be speeding and may be injured as a result. Criminal law, this is when the police have a duty and the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, and they will frequently charge those who they believe are guilty of an offence, often Section 2, Section 3 of the Road Traffic Accident, dangerous or careless driving. And it's up to the Crown to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the rider driver is guilty of such an offence. Civil law, which is what I do, it's different. We need to establish on balance of probability there has been negligence on someone's part as a result of which an injury has occurred. So we'll have a look at the interaction between criminal and civil. This is an area up in Perthshire. It's actually the A82. There's a little hamlet there. Now, the motorcyclist Mulvanny was coming down a fairly long straight section of road, but again, undulated. There were these dips. The driver was coming up the way to turn right into that hamlet because that's where he lived. Young driver, his mum was in the car. He was aware that every time he took that right hand turn in, there was limited views available. There's a collision as Mr. Mulvanny was coming down. Now, there's no doubt Mulvanny was speeding. The reason we know that is that the throw, i.e. from point of impact to where he lands, 90 meters, okay? He was badly injured, skull fractures. He had absolutely no memory of the incident, so he couldn't tell us how it happened. We established from police evidence, impact speed 67 miles of the bike, and he had got to the brakes. So there'd been a certain amount of scrub off. He was charged by the police. I felt so sorry for him. You think about these injuries. A brachial plexus injury, by the way, is horrible, often known as a dead man's arm. The injury was so severe that the arm is effectively useless. He was in hospital when the police turned up and charged the rider with dangerous. Ultimately, he pled guilty to a charge of careless driving in relation to speed and accepted that. So we have a rider with a conviction. And you could see this police marked it for me. This is where James was. This is where the ambulance was. And you could see the throw distance there. We raised an action, a civil law claim for James because he had been injured. And we alleged that the driver was negligent because the driver knew that he had to execute that turn quickly, and James would have been there to be seen. So what we did is we reconstructed the entire scene. And if you watch carefully, I don't know if this video will work. Watch. You can see, there he is. He was there the whole time to be seen. Now we constructed that. That's Roddy Benz is, I believe, our specialist. And interestingly, that's a discovery Mark II that we had to find and we hired in order to reconstruct all of this. And we were able to show the defendants in this case, wait a minute, our client was there to be seen. Yes, there was contributory negligence, but we recovered a six-figure sum in damages for a client with a conviction. The other thing that is a real bugbear is mud on the roads, okay? And what we need to look at here is if you encounter mud on the road and you come off, is there a claim? Well, yes, there's a lot that can and should be done. There's a lot of really good advice out there. If we look at responsibility on farmers who are working on roads, I don't know, we probably won't have time to go right the way through it, but I will say 3 words: prevent the mud, put up signage, and clean. Those are the duties, because Section 95 of the Road Scotland Act, it's an offence to be in charge of a vehicle and allow mud, clay, farmyard manure, and other material to be brought onto that road surface. Now, those photographs, if we just move on to the next one, of muds, there was something as well, you can see the mud there, but I don't know if you can see these tinges of diesel. And in this case, the motorcyclist managed to negotiate the mud, but came off as a result of the diesel. It wasn't mud in the road in this case, it was diesel. Diesel can only arise on a road surface through a negligent act. Therefore, there's a claim to the MIB, not Men in Black, the Motor Insurers Bureau, under the Untraced Drivers Scheme. You need to establish that the spillage was substantial and you must report it to the police in 14 days. So this case for 2 motorcyclists was successful. Other things you find on roads in the country, and we all just love them, animals. Coos, particularly. Sheep, these are known as domesticated animals. There are certain liabilities, duties on landowners in relation to farm animals. Cows on the roads, again, this is from Ayrshire. Ayrshire is the place in Scotland where you can be guaranteed that at some point or other, cows will escape. Cows should not be able to escape. This motorcyclist was riding down farm on his right. There were high hedgerows, so his view, he knows there's a farm nearby, so he reduced the speed even though it's a long straight. And what he discovered as he came up to this farm, 5 cows, 5, not 1, but 5, all made their way, and when I say made their way, ran onto the road. So he's faced with 5 cows right in front of him, and he plummets into one of them. He was actually quite badly injured, fracture injuries. The cow didn't make it, by the way. And we intimated a claim against the farmer. Liability was admitted because they'd got out through this little gate here. His livestock fences were in poor state of disrepair. Therefore, it was relatively easy for the cows to get onto the road. They admitted liability and were successful. There are duties and obligations to maintain your fences. Same doesn't necessarily apply to sheep. All of us will know there's rural areas in Scotland where sheep wander freely. All we can say, ride defensively, watch out for them. I stay down the borders, and one of the favourite runs is down by St Mary's Loch, and as you leave there, go up over the grey mare's tail, there's loads of them. But things might be a little bit different if you meet one of these fellas. That's a big bull. He's not a domesticated animal. He's a bit of a fearsome beast, and under the Animals Scotland Act 1987, there can be strict liability. A bull should not get out. Bull should be fenced after fenced after fenced. They're bloody dangerous. And under the Animals Scotland Act, sometimes strict liability can apply, which means that you don't need to establish necessarily fault. If there's a problem, it means that the owner needs to pay out even though they've done nothing wrong. A bull on a road just simply should not be there. So in finishing off, what if it happens to you? There's an obligation, if you're involved in a collision, to report the accident to your insurance company. You're obliged to do so. So we have insurance companies, and there's a number of them, not naming any names or picking on anybody, but I put Fourth Dimension right slap bang in the middle. Who are Fourth Dimension? You phone up your insurance company, a lot of insurance companies will refer you to Fourth Dimension. Fourth Dimension advertise themselves as Fourth Dimension Innovation. I like the word innovation, you'll understand why. Is a motorcycle specialist providing unparalleled range of insurance and assistance services to insurers and brokers. So think all of that. So often when you report to your insurer, you hear from these guys, and they might offer you a higher bike. Be very, very careful. Why? I've come across Fourth Dimension on a few occasions, but one particular case more recently, a rider, Robert, was involved in a collision, and he reported the accident to his insurer. I think it was Bennett's, and they said, we'll just put you on to Fourth Dimension. Fourth Dimension got in touch with Robert and said, oh, you'll be needing a higher bike. Robert says, actually, no, I've got a head injury. And he was horribly confused because the accident, completely non-fault, had a head injury. And they said, well, don't worry, we'll get a higher bike up to you and we'll get a panel solicitor. So Robert, in his confusion, thought, oh, well, that's what happens. But you report to your insurers, you get a panel solicitor, you get a higher bike. Higher bikes, credit higher, that's his responsibility. Robert actually came to his senses eventually, and he got in touch with us and he said, look, I'm not happy with my panel solicitor, can you help me out? And I said, sure, of course. So we got his file from the panel solicitor, and I was horrified to find this little gem in his file. It's called an irrevocable mandate. So if we move on, what's an irrevocable mandate? It meant that when Robert's case settled, okay, Fourth Dimension walk off with 25% of his damages. And I'm looking at this thinking, what on earth is going on here? So what it meant in reality is if Robert had stayed with his panel solicitor, on settlement of his case, Fourth Dimension get 25% of his damages. Fourth Dimension provides services to the insurance industry. Why are they walking off with 25% of client damages? And why on earth are panel solicitors agreeing to that? Horrified. We rescued Robert. His claim settled for just over £33,000. If he'd stayed with his panel solicitor, Fourth Dimension would have walked off with £8,300 for nothing. This is a client damages, horribly wrong. So, top tips. Don't take out legal expense insurance, ever. You do not need it. Number 2, this is quite important. At an accident scene, get key information. Police incident information is really important. You know, to get information from the police in relation to the third party. If you're with a mate, get a mate to take a picture of the third party registration number and make sure the police are aware that you have been injured. There's a horrible tendency, and I've seen it before, motorcyclists, you know, after an incident, if they stand up, it's like, oh, thank goodness, I'm okay. And the police come, the ambulance comes and say, no, it's all right. You know, I can walk, I'm all right. And they go home. The police will often think, oh, insurance can deal with it. You must ensure that if you are injured, you report it to police. You might not be aware of your injuries until the day after. Phone them up, report your injuries. Very, very important. Never, ever let your insurer appoint a panel solicitor. It's not up to your insurer, it's your right. Don't allow them to do it. And particularly this one, sometimes, you know, if you've been injured and you report it, you'll hear from the other side. And the other side's insurer will phone up and say, look, I'm terribly sorry. Let us deal with your case. Massive conflict of interest. Absolutely not. Overall, appoint your own specialist solicitor. Make sure they're experienced and they've got a background in motorcycling. And I think I've gone a little bit over time. So that's it. If you have any questions, and I'll figure out how we do this in this weird environment, we'll take it from there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Brenda. And really sorry we couldn't see you. I guess we would have been looking at your slides anyway and listening to your dulcet tones. Fortunately, we weren't prevented from doing that. So that was great. I hope everybody found that useful. What we had there were 3 questions. There is a questions and answer option at the bottom of your screen. If anybody wishes to ask any questions, by all means use that just now. But in advance of the webinar, we'd actually received 3 questions from individuals that Brenda's now going to perhaps answer. The first one came from George, which related to what the police's role is at the scene of an accident or a collision.
Generally speaking, the police, to be honest with you, they want to get traffic moving again. I went to a seminar that was actually run by the fire brigade. The fire brigade always have this responsibility to secure the accident scene, and there can sometimes be a little bit of tussle between fire brigade and police. Police want to get everything moving again. It is really important, as I say, if at the material time you don't think you're injured, it's really important, if you do require any form of medical treatment, to phone the police up and make sure they're aware that you've required medical treatment. Number of reasons. If the police turn up and they think there's no injury, property damage only, there's a tendency for the police to say, oh, just deal with it with your insurers, and no report is completed. If you report an injury, the police must complete what is now known as the crash report. because these are the statistics that feed into Transport Scotland in relation to minor injury, serious injury, whatever. Always report an injury to the police. And they've got a duty then to complete a very basic report.
Okay.
But it helps us.
Thank you for that. Okay, and the second question we received came from Roddy, and this was to do with, I guess, advanced riding, but he was asking the question as to whether there should not perhaps be an incentive to undertake advanced training. And he was asking us what experience you have in relation to your clients and the numbers of clients that you have who have or haven't had advanced training. What can you perhaps answer that?
Again, you know, I can only talk from my own experience. This isn't kind of necessarily very scientific, but when I look at the motorcycle riders that we're dealing with on a day in, day out basis, I would say probably only 5% have an advanced rider qualification. Whether that reflects in relation to responsibility or otherwise, I can't necessarily comment, because all these accidents tend to be non-fault or part fault. I took my advanced rider training for a reason, to try and equip myself with skills to avoid these incidents. I do think there should be incentives. A great incentive would be for the insurance industry to buy into it and to offer advanced riders reduced insurance premiums, because ultimately that's a saving in your pocket. I think there needs to be more done by the government, because, as I say, motorcyclists are, you know, overrepresented in relation to fatal collisions, tragically. So it would be nice to see some kind of concerted effort by the government, or even by organisations, to get together a bit more, to talk to each other a bit more, and to see what can be done to incentivise. Because ultimately, I do think an advanced qualification can assist, not in every incident, but it gives you that, you know, that planning, that forward thinking, expect the unexpected.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I think I could perhaps just add one other thing to that, in that the Transport Minister recently announced his road safety framework vision up until 2050, where actually he hopes that Scotland will have a zero vision of no deaths whatsoever on our roads. And they also, I believe, implemented a sort of target, our vision up to 2030, where they'd like to see a 35% reduction or 30% reduction in KSIs. But there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of meat on the bones as to how they're going to achieve that. And I think there is absolutely a definite opportunity for organizations like IAM and ROSPA and the Advanced Group and Motorcycle Scotland Motorcycle Group, the Police Scotland Motorcycle Group, to perhaps consider how we do educate and talk to motorcyclists about further training, because it's definitely going to be a way of getting to that objective that they have. Okay, the third question, Brenda, came in from Gavin, and it was to do with camera footage and use of camera footage by the police. What's the position in Scotland, perhaps England, and maybe elsewhere?
Well, we did respond to Gavin, and as I say, police powers to seize footage are often found in the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. They have certain powers to seize footage if they believe that there has been a crime. Here's one thing though, and this is really important. I was involved in a case for motorcycles completely non-fault. The following rider had, you know, GoPro cameras, helmet, and another one. And the police asked him for this. He's an independent witness. The police said, "Oh, is your camera going?" They said, "Yes." And they said, "Can we have it?" And he handed it over. Fair enough, he wasn't to know otherwise. If you're a witness to an event, maybe one of your friends, your mates, there's been a serious injury, my advice is to say to police, "I'll make it available to you. Download it, keep a copy, then give it to the police." And the reason I say that is that if you give that original file to the police and there is a charge against the driver, it can take months and months. Sometimes these files get lost, so always keep a copy. The other thing that's really important is that when you're downloading files, or Police Scotland download files, you when you download the original file onto a different format, you can lose a lot of the frames, so you don't get accuracy in relation to speed. So it is a huge area, probably worth a seminar. So as I say, they do have certain entitlements if they believe a crime has been committed. If you're an innocent bystander, witness, and the police ask for it, my advice is tell them you'll give them a copy.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Those were the three questions that were put to us in advance of the webinar. There have been quite a few posted actually since you finished your webinar, Brenda. A couple of them, one might want to answer is in relation to the time limit you have to pursue a claim. If you've been involved in an incident, are you time barred at any point, or what's the limit?
Yes, the limit is 3 years. So you have 3 years from the date of the accident in which to raise proceedings in court or to have your case settled. And that's really, really important. So 3 years, that's it. Very strict. And it's one of the most horrible things a solicitor will ever do is time bar a client's case. You must, and that's the advice, is always to those of you who have been injured, even if you think it might be partly your fault, you're not so sure, get advice early. And as I say, sometimes as well, motorcyclists unfortunately can be susceptible to very serious injuries. And that means you don't know the outcome for, a number of years down the line. You must, so long as you get into court before the expiry of the 3rd anniversary, you're okay. So settled or raised in court.
Okay. There's another couple of questions that are around, again, the area of actually legal insurance. I think your interesting observation and discussion about fourth dimension sparked a few people wondering just who they are insured with and what they've got in their policies. So they're asking, so definitely no legal coverage or legal expense insurance. What happens if you want to insure your leathers and helmets? Is that just them trying to get more cash out of you? Can you perhaps elaborate a little bit further on that?
I suppose, we have this tendency in this country, if you ask me, to be overinsured. That's my view. Some people will say, yeah, I'll take out leather protection, helmet protection, fair enough, okay? And what that means is if you're involved in an accident, it's entirely your own fault, okay? Then they'll pay up often a reduction under the policy for your helmet and your leathers. Think about this. The accident's not your fault. You can claim in full for your helmet and your leathers off the other side. So what's the point in paying a premium? If you think, oh my goodness, I might cause an accident and I'd rather get that money back, then by all means, I don't have it, I won't use it because hopefully I won't cause an accident. You never know, I could do something stupid, and believe me, I have done silly things in the past. Dropped motorcyclists, braked heavily in gravel, lost the plot. We're not infallible, but I don't have it. I think it's an added extra. But as I say, it's up to you as an individual to assess risk. The one thing you do not need is legal expense insurance. That's the one thing. Do not ever take it. Think about it carefully. You insure your motorcycle. And that means if you wreak havoc out there, your insurer will put right that havoc. If you've been injured, i.e. you personally have been injured, you're not covered under your insurance policy for your own injuries. You need to seek out a lawyer who will claim damages for you. That's got nothing to do with legal expense. When I started off in the law, it didn't exist. There wasn't such a thing as legal expense insurance. Jack Straw actually called it a dirty little secret of the insurance industry, and it's gone on from there. You don't need legal expense insurance.
Brilliant. All right, Brenda, I think that's probably all we have time for this evening. Can I just thank you very much indeed for your input and your presentation. I hope it was valuable to everybody else out there. Thank you all for participating. Hopefully you'll maybe come back and listen to some more of the presentations and the webinars over the next few weeks. Just for your information, as I said before, these are all recorded, so you'll be able to view them if you haven't actually had a chance to see them. Next up, next Monday at 6 o'clock, we're going to be delving deeper into the world of road surface defects, where Ros Boynton, our Aberdeen-based solicitor, who does quite a lot of Northern and Highland, in fact, a lot of road surface defect cases, she'll talk you just through how we handle those, what the impacts are, and how we can help you should you be in an awful position as a result of a road surface defect. So that's up next, but that's all for now.
Hold on. Can I just,
yeah,
sorry, I'm terribly sorry. I've always got to have the last word.
of course.
I just want to let everybody out there know that, I'm very passionate about what I do. I take my responsibility to the motorcycle community very, very seriously. And the thing is, for those of you who have questions, what I'd like you to know is that we have this free legal half-hour service. If you've got a question on anything, if you're not sure, get in touch. It's free advice, and we're here for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And if I'm still in the job tomorrow, given that I couldn't make your video work, hopefully we can look forward to the next one. I think you're up actually later in the series, Brenda, so hopefully we'll be able to see you that time. Thank you very much.
I'll put my lippy on again. Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.